Hey everyone, excited to be back for this week's edition of Frequently Asked Questions for Commercial Real Estate. In today's video, what I want to do is talk about a part of the acquisition process that a lot of people just don't know about, especially those that have not purchased commercial property in the past, and that is, what exactly is an environmental assessment? Now, oftentimes, banks will require you to perform an environmental assessment prior to them issuing you a loan to purchase the property. So this is a very important piece of the process that you need to be very clear on before you dive in and learn or look to acquire a commercial building. Now, before we dive into this episode and learn about what the different environmental assessment processes are, I would greatly appreciate if you can like and subscribe to this channel. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm and ensures more and more people can hear this message and learn about the many facets of commercial real estate. So now you've done that, go ahead and like and subscribe below. Let's go ahead and dive into this episode. Okay, so the question is, what exactly is an environmental assessment? Well, an environmental assessment is actually performed by an environmental engineer, and they go on site and pull documents from various local, state, and federal government repositories to get a feel for what exactly is going on site or what potential uses were on site that could potentially cause contaminants. From there, they may or may not decide that they need to move forward with some form of remediation efforts, meaning, treating the soil or instituting a machine that sucks out fumes from a basement. There's a variety of different remediation methods. But the reason why this is so important is because banks oftentimes will require you to perform an environmental assessment to ensure there's no contaminants on site. And if there are contaminants on sites, there's going to need to be some form of remediation taken before the bank will actually issue a loan. So it could hinder your ability to actually purchase a property if you're not if you don't have a good understanding of what potential contaminants could exist on site. So that's why it's so important to learn about this. And in today's video, we're going to go through the 3 different types of environmental assessments, and they're actually sequential. So, as we talk through these different assessments, you'll get a feel for how each one works and then the subsequent phase in the process. So to start off, we're going to go through phase 1 environmental assessments. Now, these are typically the most common and least invasive of the assessments, and is the one that most banks are going to require depending on what dollar threshold you're actually purchasing at. So to start off, what environmental engineers typically do is they go on site to visit the neighborhood. They also do a historical review on the site to determine what potential uses have gone through the site, and if there are certain potential uses, there could potentially be some form of contamination on site. Along with that, they do a full regulatory review that includes examination of local, state, federal files, and they'll also check all the files for the neighboring properties as well, because just because your site may have not had uses that contaminated the site, there may have been your next door neighbor may have had a dry cleaner or some other use that could have contaminated your site as well. So they'll do all those different analysis and then provide a report to you and the lender. Now, if the report comes back clean, then you're in good shape. You don't have to do any more type of assessment. However, if there's perceived contamination that has taken place on site, whether that's from uses that were on your site or a neighboring site, oftentimes the environmental engineer will recommend additional screening, which comes to phase 2 environmental assessment. Now, typically with a phase 2 assessment, you're going to need to sample the soils and perform laboratory analysis. So what they'll oftentimes do is they'll bore into the ground at different levels and take soil samples and then send it off to a lab to test for a variety of different things. First, they're going to check the groundwater on site and around the premises to ensure that it has not been contaminated. They're going to perform an assessment on long-term effects that could potentially arise as a result of some of the contaminants that are found on site. And then at the end, once they determine which contaminants are in fact on site and their potential long-term effects, they will provide some form of remediation recommendation. Now, with these recommendations, there's actually a variety of different recommendations that could take place. And the biggest concern a lot of times with phase 2 environmental assessments is the cost associated with them. Boring into the ground, especially if you already have your parking lot out there, or the soil may be very difficult to bore into. That increases the cost of the potential assessment itself. So if you do have to go to a phase 2 environmental assessment, a lot of times that's a negotiable point between yourself and the seller, because it does in fact cost quite a bit of money to do. So that's number 2. And then finally, number 3, which is the last part of the process, is phase 3. And this is where a recommendation or remediation is recommended. So there's a variety of different ways that you can actually remediate an issue. Sometimes it can require you to clean up the contamination. I know in a previous experience with my broker. My broker purchased a building that had some issues as far as the contaminations on site was concerned, and they had to bore into the ground and essentially inject different chemicals that neutralized the dangerous chemicals that were in the ground. So that was one form of remediation. Depending on the use that's going to exist on site, if it's just going to be used as a parking lot and there's no people that are going to be actively on site all the time, like a school, then maybe what you have to do is just cap the ground. So that may require you to make sure that there's no issues as far as the seeping of gases from the ground. And if that's the case, then you're good to go. So there's a variety of different remediation opportunities that may go as far as injecting chemicals into the ground or taking up dirt or whatever, or it could just be capping and leaving it the same and then periodically checking on it to make sure that the contamination hasn't seeped into the groundwater. So those are the type of things that could happen during remediation efforts. Sometimes remediation efforts can cost more than the actual building, in which case it's probably not wise for you to continue moving forward with the property. So hopefully you gain some value from this video and get a clear understanding of what environmental assessments are and how the depending on what you find, how it can affect you and your ability to purchase a commercial property. So if you're looking to purchase a commercial property in town, especially if you're looking to do one that potentially had a gas station on site, dry cleaner, or a variety of different uses that could have potential contaminants, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to help you with the acquisition. And I have contacts with a variety of different environmental engineers on site that can help provide some illumination to what's actually going on site. If you want to reach out to me, my number is 502-536-7315, or you can reach via email at Raphael@grisantigroup.com. Along with that, if you value this video, I'd greatly appreciate it if you can like and subscribe to this channel. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm, ensures more and more people can hear this message and learn about the many facets of commercial real estate. So thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time.